Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have a great and amazing movie to talk about tonight. And we have three amazing co-hosts and friends with us tonight. And so who is at the table tonight?
Eric is here for the first time in a while.
I'm Blake, your Brondo representative, here to tell you this podcast is brought to you by Brondo Sports Drink. Brondo, it's got what podcasters crave.
It has electrolytes.
It has electrolytes.
Whatever those are, lots of them.
Hello, everyone. This is Brian, and I like money.
I like money.
I like money too.
That's so interesting. I like money.
Whoa,
Yeah.
I also like money.
We're so similar.
Yeah, let's go to Starbucks.
So we should go to. So we're all giggling because we
all
decided
like hot
to
mail lattes.
Extra foam.
watch a current documentary about our political state of the union.
What's
and
funny is
it's called Idiocracy.
it began as a comedy and quickly became a documentary.
It quickly did. So this was made back in 2005, which, you know, for those of us, it is 2505 is the actual year the movie, quote unquote, takes place in, or 2005 for those of us. 2025?
It's
Isn't that just
2025 now.
It is 2025.
It is
oh my
2025.
God. All the numbers align and do weird stuff. So
Yeah, we definitely planned that and didn't just happen upon it.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Idiocracy, it stars Luke Wilson. He is selected to take part in a secret military experiment where they freeze you in hibernation. And the point was just to do 1 year, but it didn't work out that way. And knowing that we were going to watch
Thanks
this,
to the military's interactions with Upgrade.
Yes, Upgrade, yes. As a black comedy, I was like, I have in the beer fridge. I didn't go out of my way, but I did recently stop at Chill and Fill and picked up a bunch of really amazing beers, including a dark lager and a black beer or a dark ale. So we have two dark beers to go with this black comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not black comedy in the sense that it's like a lot of black comedies use a lot of like sad, dark humor, like making light of death and everything. This is just like looking at reality and going, this is so messed up. I have to make fun of it.
It's a cynical take on the future.
Yeah,
exactly.
They extrapolate some trends that they noticed in 2005, 500 years in the future. And unfortunately, some of the ideas he presents
Are actually
seem to have come true in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
12 years.
And we initially had thought that, well, we shouldn't do this because it's like everyone gets mad because it's like a political statement, blah, blah, blah. But, and
it's also just a good comedy.
And there is a prostitute that happens to, or the private citizen that
Maya Rudolph.
Yeah, she's an amazing actress. She was, I guess, selected because she had no one to hold her back other than
selected / bartered by her pimp Upgrade.
Yeah, her pimp Upgrade, and so she
wouldn't be missed in a government experiment.
Correct, but in the future she becomes vice president, or the president, or she becomes first lady. I guess
first lady eventually,
right after being CEO of Starbucks.
Which I can't imagine that being any different than what's happening today. But when they do wake up, it's a lot of time has passed.
500 years.
500 years versus 100 years. And
the premise is
general,
the population has gotten much, much dumber.
Yeah.
And
hence Idiocracy.
Yeah, the dumb people who kept breeding blew up in population. And the movie points out, and I forgot about this, the smart people, the doctors and the scientists, weren't trying to fix the world. They were trying to make makeup look better, solve hair loss and make erections last longer.
Which is pretty much what today is.
Yeah. Which kind of is two interesting points for me, at least, about this movie. Is A, I disagree with the premise that dumb people having babies is what's going to make us dumb. And B, it points out that the smart people, quote unquote, are doing stupid things already in 2005.
Well, okay, so there's suspense of belief here where you're just like, this is an interesting story. It's a great way to think, how could this happen? And there's a lot of stupid people that do a lot of stupid things. They do what they're told. They see, and whatever they see on TV or read on the internet must be true. And unfortunately, we know that's not always the case. And in front of us is this opportunity to go, oh yeah, okay, with this, is it really happening? Is it like the dumbing down of America? I think there's enough of us, meaning people who read books and actually care about our fellow man and want things to get better in the world. I think there's enough of us that won't happen, and that's the pessimism that you might have.
No, I think it might be happening. I just don't think it's because of breeding. It's not eugenics. It's systems. So if I think to say a movie like Doctor Strangelove, where there's a lot of idiots in charge in that movie, and this is taking place in the 50s in the context of the movie. But ultimately, it's really competent people on the plane who get their job done, but working in idiotic systems is what causes the problem.
Yeah.
So that's where I think is the more realistic path. If we're going to talk about how America, is being done.
The $500 hammer the military pays for, and it's because of the paperwork involved, and what has to happen between point A and point B doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah, I like that because I love Mike Judge as a satirist and a writer. Like King of the Hill is one of the best just long running shows, and Office Space was a revolutionary take on like office life. But Stanley Kubrick just has a certain specific vision, and him doing Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. It's such a whole different level of just satire and poking fun at the world. But so I'd agree with you there. But it is really funny to think of this guy who's just sleeping with 3 different women, can't keep track, and then
has
his
a
son,
million babies.
Yeah, and then his son yells, "I'm gonna have all y'all." The little family tree explodes.
Well, that does happen. I mean, when there's nothing else to do out in the country, out the country,
and you're unemployed, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah. Okay. So, Brian, from a filmmaking standpoint, acting solid. I think everyone tried to make it believable. The people that acted stupid and
they had to have been having a great time.
Yeah, they enjoyed that. They were just trying to have fun with it. As far as the staging, really, they didn't try very hard to make it "quote unquote" believable. It was obviously a soundstage, and obviously,
No, I mean, this was a parody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't trying to extrapolate a reality into the future, and that I think is the value of it. The fact that it was a parody, but we can see some parallels in our current situation. But as far as filmmaking goes, I didn't notice anything that really stood out, but that's okay too. I mean, he wasn't trying to get an Oscar with this film, clearly.
He's not Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, but
film auteur making.
But he didn't make any mistakes that really stood out.
Yeah.
It was all very competently done.
Definitely.
In terms of the acting, the directing, the story was really compelling. I take this film out maybe every 5 or 6 years and rewatch it because it's just a fun, lowbrow comedy watch.
And I had forgotten there was a bit of a love story there.
Yeah,
there's a little bit. Yeah,
and I think the fact that the special effects, what few things with blue screen and green screen things were going on, weren't purposely made to be super realistic. And
I thought they looked decent.
They weren't
especially
bad.
for 2005.
Looks good.
Made for TV kind of. Not necessarily a lot of money being spent.
But if you remember,
background.
even a few years before that, with like Xena, like the special effects in that or Hercules are atrocious.
Right,
so
really
made
bad.
for TV special effects of that era or a little earlier, perhaps.
Yeah,
and
I would say the family tree overlay was actually a really effective way of communicating an idea quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I'd say the real highlight's the writing. Like this movie full of just dumb jokes. The way it looks at how just everything becomes more adult themed because that's what people who don't think a lot want more of, to the point where Starbucks is all, I guess, prostitution, and the tax place was also all prostitution.
I couldn't tell if you could still get coffee with your hand job at
Starbucks. I imagine there's no coffee.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was strictly adult entertainment.
But they got.
I don't need that extra foam then.
Yeah. They got the quote unquote smartest writers of that world to think of the pun of, oh well, extra foam's funny.
Okay,
but the wordplay of him saying I'm not sure at the naming machine, and then the just Looney Tunes style, the Merry Melodies.
Oh yeah, it was a replay Brothers. Of the who's on first.
Yes, yeah. When it says, "You said not." Is that correct? No, I'm not sure. Oh, we know it's not. Is it not sure? I'm not sure. No, it's not sure. And just over and over, and they get stormed at, dude. And he's named Not Sure the rest of the movie.
That was his official government name.
That was such a lovely little piece of wordplay I forgot about.
So they did a web series spinoff in 2012.
Really?
During the elections, they did a bunch of short sketches.
Was it Camacho
by
just
Funny
yelling?
or Die with Camacho reprising his role.
Nice.
That's hilarious. So this
Yeah,
film,
Terry Crews played
Terry Crews
President
is great, man.
Mountain Dew something Camacho.
Yeah. So
With
this
that
had
hair, too.
this
that
had
wig is
a
amazing.
measly $2.4 million budget,
Nice.
and it only grossed worldwide $500,000 and domestically only 400,000. So it was a
really?
huge
Part of that
flop.
was the studio was exhausted with him making fun of all those brands.
Yeah,
And so they kind of just like, let's just get in the theaters out and then to DVD. We don't want to deal with it.
it's earned about 9 million on DVD rentals, and
I'm sure, yeah.
it's a great film, and I'm sure it's.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a
available
cult classic
streaming.
now.
Yeah.
And,
Everybody
it
loves
is rewatchable. I mean,
It is.
I catch things even
Yeah.
now, and I've seen
Mhm.
it probably 6-7 times.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say if you haven't seen this or at least heard of it because it's been brought up in the media and there's a lot of discussion about how our newly elected president, his first term was similar to this, and how there's parallels between
Mhm.
corporatism and how, and even in the film talks about, hey, there was a budget issue or there was a financial crisis and a big company came in and bought everybody, bought the U.S.
A
government.
fine, proper company. This podcast brought to you by Brando.
Yes.
It's got what podcast crave.
Yep. With
Yeah.
Electrolytes?
Extra electrolytes if you're good. Yeah, Brando buying out the FDA and the FCC. I forgot about the FCC part. It really got me. Like
Yeah.
that's a drink company would buy as much as they.
Well, that way they can say whatever they want in
Mhm.
their advertising. So
That's got what cows crave.
that's right.
Would they buy it or would they just influence behind the scenes?
Both.
but I would have to say, as a person who goes to Costco at least once a week or every other week, I'm hoping and praying that Costco does get that big, where it's like
Where
the
you have to
size
walk
of the
an
city,
hour?
where you have to walk an hour from one end of it
As
to
long as
another.
they have their own trams.
Yes, inside of the store, and hey, you can become a lawyer inside of Costco. You
That's
can
right.
buy your degree there,
Or
wholesale.
go to Starbucks.
or go to Starbucks inside.
I'd love for them to change the typical greeter card checker with the people to just say, "Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Yeah,
Welcome to Costco. I love you."
Do you need that affirmation?
That was a quote that when my friends and I saw this years ago, that was the thing we would say to each other was, "Hey, welcome to Costco. I love you."
so
Because it's so silly.
and who are you brought to by?
Well, Brando.
Window.
It's the podcast mutilator.
Yeah, and
But-
there-
One brilliance of the parody that I want to point out is one of the favorite TV shows of this world is Ow My Balls, which is
the balls.
a series of a guy getting punched and kicked in the balls. And the main characters laugh at it, but we were also laughing at it. So
I mean-
it was very reflective of our current
I mean,
world.
I was alive when Jackass was on TV. Of course, I think it's
Yeah,
hilarious.
we've always enjoyed people
Jackass
being hit
is-
in the balls.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jackass
Three
isn't going
Stooges.
anywhere.
That's
Three Stooges is
a
awesome.
human universal, really.
Yes.
yeah.
The
Is
guy's
that
name-
really evidence of idiocracy? Or is it evidence of our good taste?
And then hey Dan, putting the sound
We'll
of
leave you to
getting kicked in the
judge.
balls, and then we all laugh.
Yeah, I want to
His name
say
was Hormel Chavez.
the names are original and cool. I
Yeah.
mean, the
names
lawyer,
are great.
And
His
Cool
lawyer's
Ranch.
name was Frito.
The president had Mountain Dew for a middle name.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of food-based names. A lot of
Yeah.
Frito-Lay brand-based names.
Now, as somebody who studied both undergraduate and graduate level about language and technology and the orality and literacy transitions that occur and those that have and have nots, and I can actually see and understand, like, this isn't that far away. Language transitions as society and culture transitions.
Oh, yeah.
And there's even today, I mean, when you have that grandma or grandpa or that older person in your life, when you start talking about computers and or things happening in current culture, and they have zero frame of reference to that, that is a transition that's happening in society
Right.
and culture abroad, not just in
jargon
online
is becoming commonplace language.
yeah.
Shoot,
and they made that very clear. It's like if you try to speak common language to somebody, you're going to get looked at weird. And younger children, that's not uncommon. They do that. They're like, well, I use all that slang, so I know what you mean.
I could barely communicate with my peers when I was a teenager, let alone teenagers today.
Yeah,
I mean, even with gender, like they them's now like not as accepted, but it's being more. I see it in the circles I run with, more accepted as a way to set of pronouns for people. and that's all expanding. I had another point, but I lost it because I was thinking about what Eric said, and I also have had trouble communicating with my peers at the same age. Like, boy, this is tough to keep track of.
Yeah.
Well, having friends who are a little bit younger who have children under the age of 10 and trying to communicate with them, if it's not on a phone or on their wrist or somewhere, they aren't going to look at it. I'm like, let's read a book. And there's a few that actually do read books and love reading books. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot out there that don't. And I'm sure everyone that's listening or those that are at this table here know people who are like that. It's just like their kids are so wired right now. And I fear that's what it's going to turn into. The reality is that their perception on what's going on in the world is going to be so skewed by what's fed to them by the corporations, and who's in charge of those corporations makes a big deal. It is important that we have responsible people. And unfortunately, I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but that's not looking like the right way right now in America either. It's like our situation at home is not so great.
Hey, Dan. Hey, shut up. No, I agree with you on points of that. Yeah, it's kind of scary. I also get bits of a Wall-E, the future trash, and how everyone's just on like floating chairs watching TV all the time.
Right. Toilet built into the
robots
chair.
do it all.
I always forget about the toilet chair.
Right. With a bucket of some nacho butter sauce.
Do we ever figure out how to pronounce that?
And a bottle nipple.
God, that's
all that you're sipping whatever Brondo, I'm assuming.
It's got what you crave.
Yeah.
It's got electrolytes.
Yes.
This podcast brought to you by Brondo. Can we talk briefly on the what is it when like the stage setting? Like you just mentioned how like the drink thing he had, like a little baby bottle nipple thing. Every building was like grungy and not well kept. Everything was dusty and dirty. The one spot that like everything just really told you like it's the future, but it's not good.
Right. Well, they haven't just lost the doctors and lawyers and intelligentsia. They've lost the skilled tradespeople who are smart enough to fix and architects and build a building that wouldn't fall over.
They had them roped together.
They had them roped
still build
together.
Guns though.
Yeah, there were some inconsistencies.
Yeah, the guns and ammo. I mean, but if you're not using the ammo and the gun,
Fox
it's
News
not going anywhere.
Fox News is still in the air.
Yeah, of course. And
that's the only logo they didn't change.
On the violence channel. I mean, that's what they call it. It's just like, it's like there's a lot of other movies in anime and stuff that look at the future in that same kind of
like Demolition Man.
That say, hey, this is the road we're going to go down unless we make a concerted effort not to. And I'm not saying that, hey, let's turn this podcast into that. Let's get on the soapbox. No, we just need to think about, for the moment, like all of those movies that are out there that are talking about this in the future and how things could turn out or really bad. There are not that many good movies out there where it's like, oh, the future is awesome and wonderful. It's like, no, it's have and have nots. It's like the line between those who have access and ability really gets drawn in the sand. And there's you're either there and you're enjoying life or you're not.
But we've always enjoyed dystopian stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a good story, you need conflict, and what more conflict is between the have-nots that everyone identifies with, because you can always get more, and the evil people who have and are keeping the have-nots down.
Yeah. And this wasn't even a have and have nots. This was just all knots.
Yeah.
And then anyone who did have a little bit of idea, and they did say there were people and there were doctors and lawyers, but they were at the same level. It's just their responsibility and how they interacted with others it's like, so no one really has a job.
Well, but they didn't really have any expertise.
Yeah. None.
I mean, none whatsoever.
Yeah. Justin Long played the doctor who, throw around a word we don't say anymore, but just coming in like, yeah, man, my diagnosis, sorry to tell you, stuff's all messed up. Like that was the official doctor take. And the lawyer got tricked.
Saying that we don't swear on this podcast?
I'm trying not to say the R word.
Oh.
Yeah. And Dan bleeps all my swears. So.
Most of them.
The professionals, quote unquote, were just same level, like you guys said, same level. His lawyer got tricked by the other lawyer, and because he was upset that he broke his window and cut in the middle of his Ow My Balls marathon.
Which, if you saw that screen that he was watching,
it had ads all around it.
It had ads everywhere.
Yeah, it felt a little
lots of pop-ups.
Yes,
lots of pop-ups. And I'm like, I'm surprised that they have to use screens at that point. But maybe technology hits that point and no one else is progressing it because everyone got stupid. Yeah. I was like, everything should be holograms by then.
I guarantee you, they thought, well, what's better than one screen? a bunch of screens. Yeah, dude, and they high five and eat their bucket of slop or whatever.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's a bunch of screens in one
Oh,
screen.
and they're also
Whoa.
they're also extrapolating from 2005 technology,
Right.
not 2025.
Yeah, how prominent
it-
were smartwatches weren't really a thing in 05.
Nope, smartphones weren't a thing in
Smartphones
05.
weren't a thing yet.
Boy,
That's why no one has a cell phone in this movie.
Yeah.
it feels like it was just yesterday.
They had
Yeah,
pagers.
it hasn't actually been that long.
That's what's scary. That's
Blake
like
just-
20
Listener,
years
Blake
ago.
just got sad. I don't even do my next spot for Brondo. It's a sad
It's
mutilator.
sad. I don't know. I mean, I want to say that there's amounts of. It's hard for me to say that this is realistic. It's not. We know it's not. It's a story. It's cool. It's dystopian.
The one realistic thing is when they were getting the costume designing ready, they would look around saying, well, what's a shoe that no one's ever going to wear? That would be a cool, dumb looking future shoe.
The Crocs.
the Crocs.
And they found Crocs and said, there's no way this is ever going to become big. And lo and behold, like the Simpsons predicting a bunch of stuff,
A year later, it
they
was
made
big.
it big. Yeah.
And
Did
they're
they make it big,
everywhere.
or did it get big?
It just
It
got
has
big.
been,
got
it hasn't
big.
been because the studio stuffed down the movie.
So
Like,
Yeah.
nobody
they just
saw
got
it.
big.
They got big on their own because it's a shoe.
never
that
worn a Croc,
I haven't
It's
either.
pretty comfy. I've tried them.
I have sweaty feet, so I don't want to wear
Yeah,
them.
it'd be tough
You
for
have to
that.
wear socks or something with it
Mhm.
because that's what I've heard is like if you have sweaty feet, you don't want to wear them.
Yeah, I tried my housemates once, and they're pretty comfy. I was like, I'm not gonna buy these.
I've seen the fun thing where they have the toes that you can attach to the holes to make
What?
it look like your toes are coming out of the Crocs. It's
Ew.
hilarious. It's cool. There's all those add-ons you can get for your shoes now to make them look
Add-ons
funny.
for shoes. I guess
Yeah.
Idiocracy is coming.
Accessories for your Crocs. And they're not paying us to say that. Even
No,
though
they're not.
should.
Brondo is Brondo the thirst mutilator.
They're paying me an electrolyte.
Brought to you by Carl's Jr.
Oh God,
See, I haven't
bag
started
of it.
that. We haven't started the brought to you by Carl's Jr. I wanted to start that, but
I like
love
that.
I love Carl's Jr. But
I kind of wish he explained the Joe explained to him.
yeah,
Well, if they don't know you say it, you're not gonna get paid though.
yeah,
But he just keeps saying because it's a great way to get paid, easy way to make money.
yeah. Even though how are they going to know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the level of just ignorance, and I don't think it's. How do you then separate am I just doing what I'm told? Or am I smart enough to know what I'm saying means something and there's, cause and effect? So just like there's an awful lot of stupidity demonstrated in the film. And at what point does that happen? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, there's got to be some just like common issues and things and phrases and what people have been doing to cause them to completely disconnect. And I'm trying to read into
Well, I feel like it'd be more
at what point
it's a
does
more
this become
gradual
reality
thing.
in our culture?
I feel like it's more gradual. Like I commented when the IQ line was steadily going down, and I made the joke that it should be dropping way faster.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a gradual thing. Like over time, if you went back 400 years, they maybe have a little bit better grasp on the English language. They're not assuming anyone who speaks like us sounds pompous.
Well, realistically, in the real world, IQs have been rising over time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where they are now if we've been dropping again, but up
Well,
until at least recently,
maybe a plateau.
they have been.
Well,
rising.
there is some research that IQ is plateauing and maybe even declining.
You have the whole internet on your phone, and
Yeah.
most
And
people
that
have those.
People aren't exercising their brains anymore. My
Well, that is true. And
my grandmother knew every person in her town and how they were related.
right.
She could recite genealogies of every family in town. And there's no way I can keep that kind of information. in
No,
my
and we
head.
used to memorize way more stuff.
Yeah.
Literature,
Yeah.
poetry. We keep smacking mics. It's-
Yeah, and
Just being
and
there.
now if I want to remember who was in a film, I look
gotta
it
look
up
it
on
up.
IMDb.
Absolutely.
Why
Yeah.
would you need to remember it? And that's the
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah.
It's the technology is forcing us to adapt and change.
Right.
or allowing us
Well, yeah.
to?
But I don't know that that's
change.
necessarily becoming less intelligent. We're just sort of outsourcing aspects of our memory to a different thing. I used to have a pile of
Well,
books
I
I
mean-
kept next to my computer so that I could reference some quote or whatever that I needed to.
Well, I mean,
Nerd.
it depends on how the study is set up, but I think some people we are losing an ability to analyze situations as kind of a tertiary effect of keeping our memory.
I think we're losing
in a
our
phone.
historical consciousness. We
Yeah.
don't have a
Well,
culture that cares about knowing
and we
what happened
don't
or why.
critically think as
Yeah.
well anymore. because we don't have to problem solve quite in the same way
We don't have to
anymore.
prove
There's
it's
that.
true. We can say whatever we want.
Well, and we can't figure out, okay, how do I get this?
Well, you always had.
How
that a
do
little
I
bit.
capture dinner with this rock anymore?
yeah. Well, I mean, there are cultures and people in this world who still have to do that,
Correct.
but they are very much in a
They're
minority.
dwindling.
Yeah.
And they're very much have-nots.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about
Right, they're not the wealthy people. They're having more children than the wealthy, educated countries. So, if we're talking about idiocracy positing stupid people, this is not stupidity; it's a different kind of intelligence.
Well, they all were pretty charismatic to each other, even though they were dumb as hell. I just caught myself going, yeah, I could
hang out with them.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much it's a president I can get a beer with kind of vibe. Which
Well,
it was
wouldn't
04.
want to- I don't know about the president, but some of the other
Well,
guys.
that was the thing with Bush, right? With
yeah,
W. Is like,
Everybody was
I think I
you
can get a
got
beer with him.
Yeah.
Right,
But
but
yeah.
now we look back on Bush with rose-tinted glasses.
with slightly fonder memories.
Yes.
Yeah, but and there's something to be said for us sitting here around this table, digressing and thinking about that. And who knows in 50 years or 100 years or 150 years when technology is going to be completely different. I mean, everyone is saying, "Oh, we need to be scared of AI," and it's really, the search engine is dead because of AI. Because the AI is the search engine.
Right.
You don't have. You can just ask it, and
Yeah.
it'll give you a multitude of answers.
Yeah, but I don't believe anything it says.
So
Correct, and I'm with you on that. At this point, it's still too new. It's not proven itself. And not enough people have gone in and said, yes, that search result is accurate.
Right.
And once that starts happening at a global scale, then yes, then we got to start worrying about, oh, hey, there's how many people have hit yes on that, even though that's not the right answer.
mhm.
And then that becomes a problem because then how do you fix that? How do you retrain something that, we don't know what those models are and are they retrained?
I think a little independent film by Mr. Jimmy Cameron called T2 Judgment Day is the answer to that.
Correct.
That's how you fix it.
It's just an Austrian
Time
robot and a
travel?
liquid
Just
metal man.
burn it all down
We
and start over.
burn it all down and start over. Well, the
I
thing
didn't
is,
burn it all
it's-
down. He sent 2 robots to the past. It was
all
awesome.
all of those movies in that franchise, including the TV show and the anime, which is really good if you haven't seen it.
I need to see it.
You can't change the future. It's gonna still happen, just
Mhm.
like it's a sentinel event, as we have seen in all the MCU movies. It's just something that's gonna happen.
Like when Joe had that crisis where he's trying to explain to Frito, well, if I go back, I'll just tell her not to go. But if I told her, then she wouldn't have come. So I should hear.
yeah,
But if she goes back, then why am I here? And then the Costco shuttle leaves and he's caught by the police again.
yeah. I mean, there's a point in time which does reality exist only in our individual consciousness? I mean, that's string theory 101. It's just like the decisions we make and everything we experience is just our own.
Yeah, Brian.
There's a group experience that we're doing something together and we're sharing in this moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the same reality that everyone else at
Right.
this table and
Our
everyone listening has.
perspectives are each different.
Yeah, and that's
But
Yeah,
we can
no.
all agree on Blake's shirt.
yes, it's California.
Yes,
I
and
love
it's green.
my slut dad.
See, there's shared reality right there for you.
It's from Dropout. They did a season of D&D called Never Stop Blowing Up. And someone made a joke about I would go on the boardwalk and just get one of those dumb shirts, say like, I love my slut dad or whatever. And they laughed so hard and the fans all freaked out. So they made it available as a shirt. Now I
They
have
made
it.
it a real shirt.
It
Now,
looks like I bought it on a boardwalk.
no, so
And I
we-
do love my slut dad.
Yes, you do. And we will send our love and thoughts and prayers and everything we can to those in California and LA that are dealing with some crazy smoky stuff. To digress a little bit, so Brian,
Yes.
you lived there.
I did.
How insane is what's going on down there? Because it seems like there's an awful lot of fires out of control. Not to-
It's bad, and there have been a lot of buildings burnt.
Yeah.
Nobody that I personally, well, one person I personally know, I believe, has lost their house.
Oh, that sucks.
But a lot of the houses that have burned are in an extremely wealthy, well-heeled neighborhood. So you're going to see a lot about it because a lot of actors. James Woods lost his house.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah,
He sucks.
he's the only one I actually know about. But I believe Ben Affleck's house is gone.
He can move back to Boston.
Yeah.
I have
So,
no sympathy for these rich people.
I bring it up simply because, it's what's happening right now. And this
Yeah.
is part of our current moment in time.
Well, I mean, what sucks is that the Great Orange One has tried to score political points against the government of California because of this disaster,
Yeah.
which is classless.
Mhm.
And I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going to start happening here shortly in our near future that hopefully we'll be able to grow on and
Beyond.
get through and grow beyond and just deal with.
The way I'm going to get through it is by drinking a delicious beer.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I also wanted to just say that. So in even just watching sports, we'll transition in a sec. He's looking at me.
I'm trying
so hard over here.
I'm doing my job as a podcaster. Brought to you by Brondo. And
Yes. Watching even sporting events like basketball and football, so like all the announcers, everybody is talking about what's going, like, oh, so-and-so lost their home and so-and-so's family had to be evacuated. So I just want to okay, so I'm bringing this up just simply to give us a moment in time. So when we go back and listen to this in the future, we have a frame of reference, because I know that the simple fact that there's so many and it's big and it's happening, that it's probably going to.
So what you're saying is you don't care about them. You just want a frame of reference for the future.
I do very much care about them, but it's going to help me remember that's what's going on at this moment in time, because remembering the past is important.
One thing I would like to point out is that we had a huge flood in North Carolina a couple months ago, and I'm fearful that USA's cult of personality is going to overshadow that disaster, because people are so worried about all these stars that have lost their homes. I mean,
Could be.
that it's sad. It sucks to lose a home, but these stars, if they can afford $4 million homes,
Well, aren't there also
they've got
unprecedented snowstorms happening across the eastern states?
Yeah. So there are a lot of disasters being caused by potentially man-made effects on the earth, exacerbated.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I feel a lot for the people in Southern California. One of the reasons I moved up here is to get away from wildfires.
Yeah.
But there's problems everywhere.
There is. I mean, we even have some problems around here, and one of those is being thirsty.
Yeah.
So just cut my segue out then. That's fine. I am laughing, but that sounded really serious.
So, I mean, it's so we'll switch over to talking about beer. So we've been talking about Idiocracy, and we kind of digressed a bit into some other topics, but yes, interesting film from 2005. What I would call a black comedy from my perspective, not necessarily dealing with death, but it does kind of it points out a lot of things culturally and situationally that we may have to deal with in the future, and what corporatism is and how it represents and can control people, especially how technology and culture today are transitioning. So beyond that, we did have a couple of beers, and I think we all agreed that it was a really good film. Certainly check it out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you haven't seen it.
There's no nudity, no foul language except for a couple of swear words. I mean, teenager appropriated.
A lot of foul language.
They say the 3-letter F word a few times, and they say the R word a few times. So watch out for that.
No overt sexuality, but a lot of suggestions of sexual situations.
Yes.
Dax Shepard does say the phrase "Go away, Baton."
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
But some language people might find offensive.
Yeah.
But if you do find it offensive, this movie's not for you.
Our podcast isn't for you.
No, exactly.
And we couldn't find that purple canned drink they kept hiding the cover on, but we got some really good stuff anyway.
I thought about
they drank some beers in this film.
They did.
It's probably all they drank.
I thought about trying to find something that was green, and there are green beers that we've had on the podcast, but I was
Brondo's not beer. It's got electrolytes.
It's got electrolytes.
Brondo has what beer drinkers crave.
Are there beers with electrolytes?
I think Four Loko is the closest thing.
Good question. They're alcoholic drinks with electrolytes. I don't know if you could do that with a beer and how. That's a really good question, Brian. Hey, maybe Google might have an answer for us, but I'm not gonna disrupt.
Do that. It says here Brondo Teeny. You just had Brondo and then chug some Teeny.
There you go. Like I had mentioned the other day, I was down at Chill and Phil over on Lombard, which is a great place in North Portland. If you want to go, they have great food cart pod. Lots of stuff on draft and a really decent selection of beers in their beer coolers. And the first thing that we had is a Mexican style dark lager from Cerveceria Norte. So this is interesting black lager. Now there is a description. There's a whole bunch of text that I can read that's on the side of the can. It says it's a 5.4%. The dark lagers of Mexico can be traced back to the immigrant brewers who brought their brewing techniques and recipes from Central Europe in the 19th century. They found native grains that suited the beer styles they love. Our version is based on the same principles.
What native grains?
Native grains. Probably barley
Corn?
and hops and
Is
corn.
barley's not native? I don't think.
I don't know. A blend of German
Get
and North
American.
American malts. So a blend of German and North American malts and corn.
Okay.
German and U.S. hops with a German yeast and brewing techniques. So salud. So if you're not familiar with most of the lagers that come from Central and Southern America, Mexico specifically, cervezas, they are German lagers. In theory, in practice, that's who introduced those recipes and how to make them. They weren't making beer in Central and Southern America prior to colonization. They made alcoholic drinks with chocolate and things. They fermented different products, but they weren't necessarily making beer from the standpoint of here's your base recipe and they're using yeast. Yeast was something that was introduced as a European thing to beer making across the world.
That answered one of my questions. Well done.
Yeah. So this is Cerveceria Norte is located with Zogelhaus out in Southeast, like 92nd and Foster area, just north of Foster, 3 blocks or so. So Zogelhaus has a place called the Zed, which is a big conglomerate building that has a food court in it and different beers. They have their own beer there located and their own food as well. But this is a nano brewery that's utilizing their brewing equipment and making beer periodically. It's not year round. Kind of hard to find locally because it sells out really quick because it is good quality, good stuff. I believe that their brewer is formerly from another brewery that closed down post-pandemic. The owner died. Cascade Brewing, if those have heard of that. He is one of the guy who's doing this was one of those brewers, I believe.
Their owner passed away? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so all the sours and stuff, yeah, they closed down. The family didn't want to keep it going. So
I remember you telling me about that. Okay.
yeah, so there's a few breweries that are around because it was a pretty good sized production, and so all those brewers and assistant brewers went out and started their own stuff. These guys are doing really good quality stuff. Everyone here at the table had an opportunity to taste, and what did y'all think of it?
I thought it was really good. It was a little bitter to me, but it was very drinkable and easy to drink while watching the film.
So bitterness from the grains, like burnt grain, like coffee.
Yeah, it was bitterness from the grains.
Okay,
That's
Yeah,
probably
so,
why.
yeah.
That's probably why
it
almost-
wasn't really hoppy.
Yeah, there was very
No.
low hops in it, and as it should, as a European style lager, they typically don't have a lot of hops in them.
That's probably why I finished it. Almost finished mine too quickly and had to like put it down because I love that coffee bitter roasty flavor. Like I found myself just sip, and we were still on the introduction of Joe being put in the machine. And I realized I gotta slow down. I can't have 3 beers of this movie. It's too many.
Yeah, so
But I really loved it. I thought it was
yeah.
delicious.
And these were a standard,
12-ounce can.
12-ounce can. I mean, they're small, standard can, not a tall boy. So, I mean, easy to drink it really quick. And so, yeah.
Eric, how do you like it?
I'm not a lager fan in general, but when I drink a lager, I like these dark lagers that have that roasty, toasty flavor. So, yeah, even for me, I was perfectly happy with it.
Nice. Do you tend to prefer malts, like a more malty stuff? Or
Malty or hoppy. I like a good hazy IPA the most.
Heck yeah.
Probably. So
I can get behind that.
Yeah. So we did pour this into glasses. I think everybody did. And
Yeah.
so it was a fairly dark color, like almost, completely black, a little bit of brown head on it. Aromatics were kind of mild. You got a little bit of roast, little sweetness.
The sniff.
but-
Thanks to you training me, and then me just leaving and to go for more pub beers and to cates.
Yes.
Now I always take a whiff of every fancy beer I pour. I didn't get a lot on this one.
Yeah, it's very shallow. Most lagers, I mean, it depending on the hops that they're using, and because this has roast notes against any of the hops that they were using, those hops are going to fall out really quick as compared to those green notes that you're going to get. And I think they probably used some really good aromatic grain roast, some dark roasted things that really expressed nicely. In simply because this isn't necessarily a light lager; it's 5.4%. It still drinks like a light lager, like something around 4% would. So be careful with them when you're out there. And I'm glad they're selling it in a small can and not a tall boy because this is something you could sit there and just drink and you wouldn't think about it. And I think it went well
Like
with the
I did.
film from that standpoint. I did the same. Like I poured myself a half glass and it was gone. And I'm like, oh, we're not even halfway through the film. So I guess we're just going to have to just be patient and wait a little bit. Anyone else have thoughts on this fairly good beer?
Yeah, I'll say, and this tees up the second one. I enjoyed this slightly more than the second one.
Okay.
Interesting.
and let's have a discussion. I'll try to figure out why.
So
Well,
Dan, talk slow to give Brian time to think.
Okay, so the
Very
second
slow.
the second beer we had is by Holy Mountain out of Seattle, Washington, which is known for their sours and not necessarily their ales and lagers and things that aren't soured, but they do make some pretty amazing beer all around. And this is called Black Beer. It's in an all black label with a little bit of kind of gold greeny text on it. And this is called a dark ale. And now I could not find any information related to what they mean by dark ale. I don't know if this is a porter recipe. I didn't really get a lot of kind of roasted barley notes, which is you're going to get in a porter. It was thin, like you would necessarily get out of a stout. So perhaps it was a stout recipe. I want to say that I did read that it does have a little bit of flake barley and Maris Otter, so it's a very British style. And the Maris Otter is going to give you that more kind of burnt bread toasty approach to it.
What is Maris Otter?
That's just the name of the grains.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The English porter that I make uses roasted barley and Maris Otter as its base grains.
Gotcha.
So from me and my perspective, this is basically just an English porter. It did have a lot of roasted notes to it. The body was a little bit medium, and this is actually only 4.5%. So this is less alcohol than the lager we had, even though they both had a real kind of similar mouthfeel. One had a little bit more body to it, but the similarities in what you got, like a chocolate and molasses and burnt sugar on the nose.
It was very similar to me, and I think what I was reacting to was the kind of the bitter roasty flavor. It was just a little bit different profile, and there was something about it that didn't hit me quite as well.
Yeah.
Not enough Brando.
Not enough Brando in there.
It's true. I think I haven't tasted an ale quite like this before. For myself, I still preferred it slightly over the lager because I just prefer ale over lager.
Yeah.
But
I think I liked it better than the first one. I just drank the first one so quickly and had to make myself stop. This one I was sipping slower because I can usually catch when acts are in a movie. And this one I was thinking, I'm not sure if I know where we are in the film. Because I forget how far it goes after he goes to take on the dildozer and that other horrible machine.
So I guess, you could say that there are probably a 3 or 4 act because, the first part is the set up for him getting into the time machine and the cryogenic pods that he then wakes up from. And that's a good 15 minutes into the film. I mean, the setup and the introduction.
The end of the
characters.
first act is, I think, when they when they wake up in the new world. Yeah.
Sorry to distract back to the movie. I like this. I guess it had more mouthfeel. I wasn't sure if I caught any difference. It seemed really similar to the first one, just not in a negative way, not as easy to drink. I found myself savoring it a bit more.
A little bit more bold.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
A little licorice.
That makes me sad. I don't like licorice.
Yeah,
I normally don't like licorice.
Maybe that's what I didn't
I'll
like.
make you like some
I don't like licorice.
I don't like that.
From the tasting notes and some of the reviews I saw, the brown sugar coffee, roasted malt, and there's that hint of licorice on there, which I do get a little bit of. I finished mine pretty recently, so I can still think of that as a flavor profile that does exist.
Okay.
It is pretty rich. It is, I think, a richer, more solid beer than the first one. The first one being a lager, the one obviously an ale, so warm ferment versus cold ferment. You typically don't get as much body when you're doing cold fermentation. All of that falls out and you're just left with a thinner body. The thing is porters have always been called sort of the lighter version of beer because you're just getting roast. You shouldn't have any hops. I didn't get any hops on this beer at all. The East Kent Goldings is usually below 6% alpha acidity. So it's just there for aromatics and that's it. The bitterness is going to be super mild. You're going to only get that primarily from the roast.
So porters are typically more of like a tasting kind of beer.
Yeah.
Like something you want. When you say, I want something for flavor, most people go for porters. That makes sense.
I think both were really good. I think actually both beers went well with the movie. Simply they weren't distracted. They were interesting.
They didn't detract from the movie. You weren't
Correct.
like, oh, what a beer, and for missing a joke because this movie's packed full of jokes, both visual and written, spoken.
But it wasn't so intricate that you have to pay attention all the time. So I think each of these beers had a little flavor. They weren't just like background beers that you could just pound all night and not remember.
Which is sort of what they did in the movie.
Yeah.
A lot of tall boys that purple can.
Yeah, I thought about that. I thought about trying to find something that we could just it's a 2% beer. Let's just drink it. And it's like, no. Well, yeah, it's called seltzer. It's called hard seltzer. They typically
I'll just say just mix Bud Light with water.
Yeah. There
pour,
you go.
pour some Bud Light over ice.
There you go.
I've seen that.
With
Is
a
there a
packet
Bud
of
Light
Splenda.
slushy? You
Yeah.
can make? Shaved ice.
What is it, your anniversary?
Cube
Calm down.
No, I actually saw that in the Midwest. I saw that in Wyoming.
A
People
beer
sat at
slushy?
the bar. We sat at the bar, and the people next to us, locals, ordered their Bud Lights, and they came with a glass of ice, and they poured it over the ice.
But it wasn't shaved ice. They weren't
No,
making
it was cubed ice. It was just like regular ice you
Like
get in
a
your
soft drink.
I want to go get shaved ice and have them pour beer over it.
So
as a-
there
Paid for this?
there are beer slushies. Those do exist. Back before they started, a lot of the bars here in Portland they do hard alcoholic slushies.
yeah.
There are some that they use cider with it, or they actually just mix
Ooh.
it into cider. Haymaker here on Killingsworth,
That I
he
definitely
used to
see.
do beer
It
and
was like
cider
an iceberg,
slushies.
right? It's called an iceberg.
So they would pour half. They would
All right.
they would layer the slushy on top of the beer, and you would just mix it, and it would actually taste really good. The mix. So they weren't making a slushy with the beer. The slushy was added to the beer. So I don't know if you do a slushy with beer. I don't know if
Tune in
the
next
alcohol-
episode when we figure it out.
Yeah, I know that's a good question. So we have two good questions from this wonderful discussion we're having. So yeah, beer slushies, and what was your question, Brian?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, I got a question.
We'll come back.
Do you
around
like
to it.
money?
Do I like money? Yes, I like money. And any other thoughts on these beers of the movie before we close this out?
Yeah.
Beers are tasty. It's a fun movie. I'd say check both out. If you can't get these beers, something similar, dark ale, something light.
And make sure you get your electrolytes.
Yeah. This podcast brought to you by Brando.
No, actually, this podcast is brought to us by us sitting right here at the table. We're all
By Dan.
by Dan.
It's brought by Dan.
Wow.
Dan does all the work.
Yeah,
Yes.
but, you know, it's a fun hobby. I'm glad,
Danco.
I'm glad
We like
everyone is hanging out and listening. And as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts and no one else, because the only one getting paid is the hosting company that hosts our podcast at this point.
Hey, dummy. If you don't hydrate, if you're gonna dehydrate. That's the best way. That's the best way I could think to like make
with electrolytes.
Get yourself a
Electrolytes.
big ass
I think
water.
I'm going to start outsourcing all my opinions to AI, though. So
I just got so mad.
All right. Well, thanks for listening and hanging in there, everybody. You watch this movie if you haven't. Try to have it in our thoughts and prayers that our universe and our world is not going to turn into that anytime soon. So, but you know, it's
yeah, we got
keep up
500 years. Man.
We have 500
Let's
years.
hope
That's a long
Fuddruckers goes the
time.
direction that it does in the movie.
Yes.
What am I talking about? Watch the movie.
Watch the movie because the name changes over time. All righty. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
You bet.
Later, y'all.
This is Brian signing off.